Hey everyone, so if you're watching this, you are trying to get some help, trying to move from an annotated bibliography to writing what we would call a synthesis paper. By synthesis, we're just talking about bringing sources together and trying to demonstrate what they all have in common. The most common form of this genre of writing is called a lit review. A lot of your papers that you'll read in academics will have lit reviews as part of their process. That's generally how we start empirical essays. But it's just important you know how to construct one of these. It's a really common tool to help understand really complex conversations. And it's really good to demonstrate where there are disagreements in a discussion so that you don't have everyone agrees to this, let's talk about something else. It's more like, let's talk about how they agree, or why they agree, or what is it that they agree on. It helps us get into the deeper part of these conversations. And it's really important we have disagreements. It's part of academics that we disagree. It drives us to find better data and more information. So, an annotated bibliography is really simple. For our assignment, if you're in my class, you do the research. And we've talked about before, but you should definitely be using the reference pages from research that you conduct to find new articles. It really helps narrow the scope down. It really helps drive to a very narrow point so that you're not reading really broadly about a more generalized topic. Something that a lot of people mess up on, especially if you're in the databases, is that you need to make sure you're giving a link in your annotated bibliography correctly. You can't just take the link from the URL bar at the top. You actually have to go to the side, and there's typically a button there that will say permalink or stable URL. That's the link you need to give me. And there's a great check on this. We're at GCU, so if you're at our school, then great. But all you have to do is get off of the school's internet server. And if you're off of it and you're on a public server, like even a Starbucks or Panera Bread or wherever, if you're at these places, it's a great place at home. If it compels you to pay for it, then it's going to compel me to pay for it too, which means I can't read it. And if we're working at the same institution, in other words, as a teacher at the school you're going to, I will have the same access you do. And so if you cite it correctly, it should ask you to log into the library, which will ask me to do, and then I can go to the article and read that as well. And lastly, make sure you're capitalizing correctly. For example, the journal article's title. So if the title of the article is only capitalized in the first letter of the subtitle, and proper nouns. Other than that, there should be no capitals. And so pay attention to that. It's all in the APA Purdue OWL guidelines. So if you go to Purdue OWL and you just Google it, you'll find all these. Now for the annotations, there's a lot of ways to do this. If I'm going to write a lit review, I don't want to assess it. I don't want to analyze it. I want to know what it says. Because at the end of the day, I'm not really going to analyze the articles either. And so whatever my annotations are, they should serve the purpose of my summary. And so for me, I don't want an analysis of the article. I just want to know what the article says so that I can then replicate that in a later lit review or synthesis paper. So we went over that, and last week I have another video on the channel about summarizing you can go to, but keep that in mind. If you're going to use in-text citations, which again I highly recommend, if the goal is at the end of this to write a lit review, then go, use them, and we'll show you why here in a minute, because it does play a part in my video here. You have to, in our paper, and in any research, especially for APA, you really want to make sure that anything you cite is discussed in the paper. You don't want to try and pad the paper with extra sources. I can tell you right now, there's only 5 here. I will 100% be counting to 5. I can count to 5 really easily. I've been doing it since I was like 1 or 2. I'm pretty sure I'm okay. And so I will just count to 5 and say, do you have 5 articles? If you don't have 5 articles in your synthesis paper, we have issues. And then you want to be accountable for the whole argument in the annotation. You need to demonstrate that you understood the article by having a commanding understanding and presenting that understanding to your audience. So once you've read all your articles, the goal is to find intersections. We're using the chapters from this book from class. If you haven't read the book, this book is all about the Manhattan Project. It's literally titled The Manhattan Project. And so we're talking about these 3 chapters from this one book, or these 3 chapters represented in this book, which is part of a larger study. And these 3 authors are all talking about after the bombing of Japan and after the surrender, how did they talk about it? How did they justify it? Did we drop it for the reasons we said we dropped it? And again, you can read the book to get this. These were our summaries. This is pulled directly off of another presentation I gave my students. None of this really matters except that there's a lot of direct quotes in here. And I will show you, because I used a lot of these direct quotes, they are just represented in this is just a nice visualization of what do they have in common. And so Walker, he largely focuses on this timeline, moving us from the directly after the bombing to the 1990s, talking about the construction of this narrative of why we dropped the bomb. Hasegawa goes into the discussions of the 3 nations at the end of the war, America, Russia, and Japan, and he talks about the Russian aggressions in Japan and violating the Neutrality Pact, Japan's victimization of itself at the end of the war, and the Americans' belief that they dropped the bomb to end the war. And Alperovitz focuses on why are we still talking about this? It was, now 70 years ago. Why, in his title, does this decision continue to haunt us? But our goal is, what do these 3 have in common? And they have a ton in common. I put 2 here just so it was readable to you, but we know that we bomb for more reasons than we say we do, which, by the way, will be my thesis for this paper. I don't really get into the stories that were too simplistic, but that would also be a great thesis. Why? Because I'm going to go simpler in my claims and my topic sentences. I want to talk about what are the other reasons. And each topic sentence is going to give a reason and then talk about how the authors discuss that reasoning, which gets us to the synthesis paper. So this is the process. We move from an annotated bib to understanding how these things talk to each other, to outlining the paper. So I would just start with paragraphs, because the paragraphs really help. Where I have a list of intersections, as we had here. I'm going to choose the 2 intersections, and there's a lot to go into this choice. For example, keeping in mind you have to be accountable for all 5 articles. What will do that? How can we talk about that? Once you've identified the intersections, you've also identified your topic sentence. What is the intersection? That's all we want to say. We don't want to, in a good lit review, I would refrain from using authors as the topic sentence of a paragraph, because that paragraph can only be about that author then. If we make the paragraph about an idea, then we need the topic sentence to be about an idea. So that's the goal here. Make a claim about the conversation that is occurring. What is the topic of that conversation? For us, we're talking about the bomb. So we can go over, we could say, historians agree that the bomb would not have ended the war by itself. Is that part of the reasonings? Yeah. This is saying that the reasoning was it ended the war. We're like, but that's not really the reasonings. They knew, and that's why this was known as added to this topic sentence. They knew at the time the bomb was not going to end the war, or that other things could have ended the war. And then I'm going to provide evidence. If you use direct quotes in your annotations, then you can just go to your annotations and pull those direct quotes directly over to your paper. And that's what I largely did here, as you're seeing. Here's my evidences. Notice that I forgot the year here on Walker. I will grab a arrow. Oh. But yeah, this Walker needs to be fixed. I tried to do them all. I obviously made a mistake, but hopefully I rectify that later. From here, all I did was I deleted the bullet points. And it gave me this. I also reorganized it because I wanted Walker first, because I wanted to get rid of the "this was known." Something that I'm really big about teaching is that topic sentences control the information you're arguing. If I say this was known, I need to prove this was known. So it can't just be that the bomb would not have ended the war. it has to be that they knew the bomb was likely to as likely to end the war as anything else. And there's a lot of evidence here. I didn't even provide all the evidence that I could have used for this, but this is a big deal. I put Walker first to deal with that because he says specialists who studied the available evidence reached a broad, though hardly unanimous consent. That Truman and his advisors were well aware of the alternatives that seemed likely but not certain to end the war. So we know they knew that there were alternatives to dropping the bomb. We know they knew there were alternatives to dropping the bomb. We know they knew that those alternatives were probable to end the war as well, as probable, maybe less probable to end the war. But that's what we have to prove. From there, I reorganized it, and I filled in some gaps and made this other paragraph here, which includes some discussions, but it still misses transitions between my articles. And here's my final one that you guys can pause now to read. I'm not going to read it out loud. But what's important is I'm trying to build fluid conversations as I move. I may need to more prove they knew now that I'm reading it back. And so I might have included more evidence about that other authors use that talk about things like Japan let the bombs drop. They had let cities die before, and they didn't seem to care for their war effort. So you can pause it now and read this if you like. Okay, so we can move on. This is our final paragraph. Now we have to write intros and conclusions. And so the idea is you have 2 good body paragraphs to satisfy the word requirements, and I'll show you my copy at the end here. But we just need really simple intros and conclusions. There's not a whole lot of room here. I don't want big, overdeveloped intros because there's not a lot of room. So you're seeing here, again, you can pause it here in a minute, but I just gave you the topic. That's it. This is about the Manhattan Project and how we talk about it. And the conclusion is, why does this matter? I've constructed a conclusion here about it matters because then we can see history from a more realistic lens and not from a really flavored lens. So hopefully this helps you understand the assignment. The only other thing I want to bring up is how it should look. And so this is my Word document. This is my title page, which is APA 7th. And I will turn this on for a minute. I'm using the page break feature. It's super vital you guys learn this because there's a lot of spacing issues that are happening because people are not using the page break feature. It's just nice because if I change anything on my title page, it will not affect my first page of my document. By the way, I want you guys to start with the synthesis paper because that's the thing I'm most assessing. It's the new thing, the thing that I can look at the logic of. And notice bolded title, page numbers, everything is in order. And all I've done is I've copy and pasted it here. I forgot to put the paragraph break between these two though. So that's how it should look. My paragraphs are indented. I didn't write a second paragraph. Then I included another page break. And again, as you guys edit and do things, it's going to affect the references page, which we don't want it to do. Well, if we go back and put in a page break, anything I do up here will never affect the references page. For example, just to show you this, I'm going to delete my entire conclusion. Let's say this was, I don't like this paragraph. Page break moved, references didn't move. And if you're wondering where it is, it's literally in the Insert tab, Pages, Page Break. And if you click the same button I did, which is this paragraphing button that's up here, it will turn on the feature that allows you to see the actual commands for Microsoft Office, which is super annoying when you're trying to write, but is great when you're trying to edit. And this symbol is for returns or paragraphing. So this is simplifying that I centered it. This is simplifying that it's a header. This is indentations. And the dots between words are space bars. But it's just a nice tool to make sure that you're staying organized. If you need anything, make sure you come talk to me. Otherwise, I hope this helps.